So this clip's been going around. People have been reacting to it. And a few specific things about it I think it's important to remark on.
Almost every child goes through some kind of identity crisis.
Yeah, it's part of puberty.
Exactly. It's just part of growing up.
Yeah, why, what do you mean puberty? It's part of growing up. Elon is actually more right about this than Peterson is. It's part of growing up, figuring out who you are. And that's especially intense in your tweens and teens, and then in college, if you go to college. But ideally, you're continuing to understand who you are, for the rest of your life, although evidently Elon and Jordan have it figured out.
It's very possible for adults to manipulate children who are having a natural identity crisis into believing that they are the wrong gender.
Yeah.
Why would anyone do that? Why? Like, what's the motivation? And who is this army of conspirators who are taking out your child?
Especially, absolutely.
And that they need to be the other gender, or they need to be a boy, or boy needs to be a girl,
or neither.
Why are you willing to make this an issue?
Well, I would just like some evidence that this is what people are actually doing anywhere. And by the way, this seems to be mainly about teachers. Peterson's going to go after psychologists in a minute, but clinicians. But this seems to be about the so-called woke teachers whose mission it is to, as Josh Hawley says, deconstruct American masculinity. That's what it's all about. And there's literally no evidence of this. None. Either of ill intention or of manipulation. Speaking as a teacher who's worked with a lot of teachers over decades, our main concern is to listen to the students when they talk to us. That's what we do.
Do you think?
Well,
it's sort of like the natalist issue.
It happened to one of my older boys.
To one of my dozen, is it 12 or 13 children that he has? And yet he does all these things. And I want you to pay attention to how much of this is actually about his child.
Where I was essentially tricked into...
I was tricked. I didn't change my mind. I was tricked. Essentially tricked. By the psychologists, by the woke psychologists, the woke teachers, his wife, I imagine. He doesn't actually say. He just says, I was tricked. Because, of course, he would never choose such a thing on his own.
Signing documents for one of my older boys, Xavier,
who is no longer called Xavier and changed her name to distance herself now that she's 20. She did that when she was 18 to distance herself from her father, who clearly can't stand her.
Before I had really any understanding of what was going on, and we had COVID going on, and so...
Oh my God, it was all so confusing. I'm super smart, but it was so confusing.
There was a lot of confusion,
he's embarrassed, and he's pretending that someone tricked him, and that any normal person in this situation would do this.
I was told, Xavier might commit suicide if he...
That was a lie right from the outset. No reliable clinician ever believed that. There was never any evidence for that. And also...
You don't present any evidence for there never being any evidence for that. It's ridiculous. You don't get to just say there's no evidence and there was never any evidence. You don't get to just say that without having to actually provide your own evidence.
So if there's a higher suicide rate, the reason is because...
Okay, if there's a higher suicide rate, have you actually talked to clinicians? Have you actually talked to counselors? And the ways that, because I have, as a teacher and as a friend with clinicians, and they're legitimately, genuinely worried about this. And that's why they give the advice that they do. Not to manipulate kids into feeling like they need to be another gender, but to actually pay attention to what they're saying and take them seriously, instead of thinking and treating them like their feelings don't matter. And that doesn't mean their feelings are right. Of course it doesn't. But their feelings are real. And their feelings have real impacts on them and the people around them. At least if you're not a robot, like Elon apparently, and don't have those feelings except the rage of being tricked and confused. And tricked when you were confused because you were confused and it's not your fault.
Because of the underlying depression and anxiety, and not because of the gender dysphoria.
What underlying depression and anxiety exactly? Like, what clinical evidence is there that gender dysphoria is a manifestation of some other deeper depression and anxiety? Like, that's just he's just making things up. He's got an idea in his head, but he has zero evidence for this.
And every goddamn...
And he proclaims it with such confidence and outrage. It's outraging.
Clinician knows that too.
Every goddamn clinician knows that. I have not seen that data. And I'm pretty sure Jordan Peterson hasn't seen it either, because it doesn't exist. And to impute bad faith to the entire community, they can disagree with each other and they can argue, they can accuse each other of bad faith. They do that all the time. But you need to like give me something here, instead of just building your case on the bad faith of your opponent.
And they're too cowardly to come out and say it.
Those cowards.
Right, and so that, and then we end up in exactly, when I saw that lie start to propagate, it just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's like...
It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because you were terrified? Or is it like a dog's hackles going up? Is that what you're saying?
I see. So you're telling parents that unless they agree to this radical transformation, that their children are going to die, and you think that's moral, and you think that's true. That's so...
I think if they're saying that, I'm inclined to think that most of the time they think it's true. And I'm inclined to think that all the time they think it's true. They might be wrong. They could be wrong. But I don't believe they're lying to you. And that's the part, like, you can't address mistakes when you think they're lies, and treat them as lies instead of treating them as mistakes.
That is so pathological that it's almost incomprehensible.
So now he's diagnosing the entire, psychological clinical community as pathological. Pathologically something. It's not clear what, just pathological, because that's bad.
I can't imagine anything worse. I can't imagine a therapist doing anything worse than that, or sitting by idly.
He's so mad!
And remaining silent while his colleagues are doing it. It's pathetic.
Pathetic.
It's incredibly evil.
Evil. Not like, I don't know, anti-Semitism, or white supremacy. That's not evil. Just these unnamed, and by the way, we have actual white supremacists, and we've seen them, and we've seen their white supremacist claims. Like, we don't have to, like, interpret most of that stuff. Like, you can talk about disagreeing about things Trump says or whatever, and whether they mean what they appear to mean. But the Proud Boys are not coded. The people marching in Charlottesville told us exactly what they meant. We don't have to interpret that stuff. And that is evil. And if we disagree about that, then you're wrong. This is rhetorical manipulation. Speaking of manipulation.
And I agree with you that people that have been promoting this should go to prison.
It won't stop till that happens.
Yeah.
I won't stop. I won't stop. Stop what? Stop being an asshole? Because that's basically what he does. He's not an activist. He's not a politician. He's not like getting petitions together or anything like this, promoting legislation. He just yammers on to his choir as the anti-woke preacher. And here he promotes himself as this, man who's going to change the world. And unfortunately, he is having an outsized, I would say, impact.
It'll just go underground.
It'll just go underground.
Puberty blockers are being accessed online by kids all the time through
Sure they are. Sure. Wow, that's terrifying. Must be true.
medical channels. So, yeah.
Through non-medical channels. If you read anything on this, it's all about the disparities in access to hormone blockers, to puberty blockers. Not how there's black market, a black market for puberty blockers. Like, with what money? Like, the people who've got the money can get it. The people who don't can't.
It's not going to stop. Okay, so I see. So that's
so I was tricked into doing this.
Right. Just remember, he was tricked. It's manipulators tricking people.
And
The confused children are being manipulated and tricked, and the confused parents are being manipulated and tricked by the clinicians. And I can't believe they're not saying teachers here, but they surely mean teachers are manipulating and tricking everybody.
it wasn't explained to me that puberty blockers are actually just sterilization drugs.
No, they're not. That's one of the possible effects. But that's not what they do. And even if they did, what are you saying? That if you had known that, you wouldn't have signed the papers? And of course, his daughter is saying he wasn't. He knew he knew everything they knew.
Anyway.
Anyway, but like that's the closest sign we get of emotion.
And so I lost my son essentially. So they call it dead naming for a reason.
Yeah,
You lost your son when you treated him like a non-person, Elon.
All right. So the reason it's called.
So now the reason it's called dead naming is because they're dead. No, the reason it's called dead naming is because the name is dead. You moron. You butthead. And so he turns this into the thing, of how he's lost his child, as if his child is, cremated or buried somewhere, instead of like out there saying, you never cared about me. And that's why you're dead to me. And I changed my name so that I wouldn't have yours, Elon.
Dead naming is because your son is dead.
No, the trans people themselves call it dead naming. The people who have lost their children aren't the ones who started calling it dead naming. For that reason.
So my son Xavier is dead.
Well, you're dead to him. / her.
Killed by the woke mind virus.
The woke mind virus! Okay. Can we stop with the biological metaphors that make this seem all like scientific and evidence-based and measurable? Because it's not. Viruses, there's a field called epidemiology that tracks the actual spread of actual viruses. And you can do that mathematically. This woke mind virus thing sounds terrifying, like out of a science fiction film, but it's just a metaphor people are using for something they don't like that some people are starting to think. And so the woke part is about the part about it that they don't like. The mind part is about how it's a way of thinking. And the virus part is about how it's dangerous and deadly. And so you put all of those things together, and it's absolutely fear-mongering. That's all it is fear-mongering. And you make it sound biological and scientific, and suddenly it seems like way more real than anything else, even though you're talking about ideas.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
Well, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be rejected by a child when you gave them no reason to not reject you. Oh,
Yeah.
look at me so sad. I'm sorry, but I have no sympathy for this man.
So,
Yeah, and there's lots of people in that situation now.
right.
It's not pretty. And lots of demolished kids.
Demolished kids. I see lots of concern for the kids here. Like, what about his kid? Oh, right. His kid's dead. So there's no relationship now to have with that kid. There's no concern anymore for that kid. All of the sympathy is supposed to go to Elon because he lost his son. His son who is not dead, but who is very much alive. And Elon seems to be making zero effort to have any kind of relationship with her at all.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's a good reason to be the final straw.
Like, what do you mean final straw? Final straw of what? That this is why he's willing to, like, risk everything. I mean, this is a guy who drops millions and millions of dollars on a company, and he's moving his company in a snit fit from California to Texas because Texas is just as reactionary as he is as a state. What's he risking here? Like, what does he actually stand to lose here? I would argue nothing.
All right, so let's.
So I vowed to destroy the mind.
I vow to destroy the heart mind. It's like Inigo Montoya having vowed to avenge his father. Like, there's something noble when you vow things. And he seems to say it as if it's in honor of his child. The very child who's actually still alive, and he could be trying to have a relationship with if his child actually mattered to him.
Woke mind virus after that.
I'm so serious.
And we're making some progress.
We're making some progress. Like, what do you mean we're making some progress? What does that even mean? We're making some progress. We're fighting the woke mind virus. Does that mean getting Trump elected? Is that what you mean by fighting the woke mind virus and making progress?
Join the
Join the club.
club.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait, which club? Which club are you joining? Exactly. Jordan Peterson is a virus. I mean, he's not, because I really do hate those metaphors. But I don't understand. And then look at all this. Like, look at all this. Like, Jordan Peterson, so serious, so chastising. And here he is with Elon Musk, whose anti-Semitism is pretty straightforward. And look how he's being made up here. Right? Like, we just watched that video. These red eyes. Like you have to make Musk look even more pathetic than he is. It's ridiculous. Thanks for your time.